The views expressed on the You Cannot Fail Rare Disease podcast series are those of Jerry Cahill and guests, and not necessarily those of the Boomer Esiason Foundation. Nothing on the Rare Disease podcast series should be considered medical advice. Such advice can only be provided by a medical professional who deals with rare disease. The Boomer Esiason Foundation and Jerry Cahill cannot be held responsible for any damage which may result in information on this podcast series without consulting a medical professional. You're watching the You Cannot Fail Rare Disease podcast series presented by the Boomer Esiason Foundation, advocating for people living with rare diseases.
Hello everyone, and welcome to You Cannot Fail's Rare Disease Patient Education podcast series. This episode, Overcoming Physical, Emotional, and Social Barriers with Post-transplant Lymphoproliferative Disorder, was made possible through an unrestricted educational grant from Atara Bio. Today we'll meet Andrea Eisenman, 57 years old from New York City, diagnosed with CF at 9 months old. At age 35, on April 25, 2000, Andrea received a double lung transplant. She was then diagnosed with PTLD in 2017 and a reoccurrence in 2021. Andrea leads an active life, volunteering her time for organ donation awareness and with the CF Roundtable newsletter.
I'm Andrea Eisenman. I'm 57 years old. I have been transplanted for almost 22 years. In April 25th will be my 22nd anniversary. And, just trying to keep busy with social life and the dogs and my husband, and just, trying to laugh as much as possible. I went to school to become a graphic designer, and I minored in printmaking with silkscreen. And now I, volunteer for the CF Roundtable for their graphics. I really like to cook, and I like to challenge myself by making new recipes. I find it challenging and also creative, and I also like to read when I have the mental capacity, and I like to exercise because it clears my mind as well as helping build up my body and keeping my lungs still strong. Growing up, my mom was the pivotal person in my life. She was always there taking me to doctor's appointments and my main emotional support. When dealing with my transplant, I would never have made it through a transplant without having her there to, let me move in with her and, taking care of me. And she went to doctor's appointments with me. Getting the transplant was like a new lease on life. I mean, it was going from 13% lung function to 86% lung function, where I could take a full breath and I wasn't coughing all the time. It was just like a game changer. I'd never heard of PTLD, and it was kind of sprung on me that in 2017, after getting a CAT scan for a deep vein thrombosis in the ER, 2 months later, my transplant doctor told me I had to get another CAT scan, and that's when they started putting the pieces together that I probably had PTLD. I almost thought I was gonna faint. When my transplant doctor told me, I was very upset. I didn't know what it was, but she said it's cancer and it's serious and you have to get it treated, because I was just leaning I'm done. I don't wanna do any more treatments. I'm just over it. But with that treatment, I lost a lot of lung capacity. And so now I'm dealing with my lung capacity not being as good as it was before I was diagnosed with PTLD. So I keep referring to PTLD, but it's really post-transplant lymphoproliferative disease. Having the PTLD experience, being diagnosed, I was really angry at first that I had cancer. Because I just said, I've had everything and I've lived so compliantly with what I was supposed to do. Why is this happening? And there's no reason. It happens. There are bumps in the road of transplant. There's skin cancer, there's metapneumovirus, which really knocked me down a peg. I try to keep a good sense of humor about it. Maybe not at that moment when I'm diagnosed with something, but maybe a few days or weeks later, I can kind of laugh about it. I mean, people say to me, "You're the strongest person I've ever met." And I say, yeah, I'd rather not be. I'd rather, just have a normal life and not have all this drama of readjusting and refiguring out how to live. I mean, it's a constant balance. I've had PTLD twice, or what they call a recurrence. It began in 2017. I was treated for 2.5 years with a chemo, and then it recurred in April of 2021. I was fortunate to be able to be in a clinical trial. And this was, and while I'm still ongoing in the treatment, I feel very positive about my outlook. I had to change my life dramatically because I was needed at the hospital every week to check in. If I wasn't getting a treatment, I was getting blood work. So being diagnosed with PTLD on top of everything else that I have going on, so Columbia has become my second home. I think what I would say to researchers in rare diseases is that me as a patient and others really appreciate your work, and I think I've seen the oncologists be really excited and passionate and hopeful, which in turn makes us patients very hopeful that we're able to get something for treatment and cure. How am I doing today? I feel good. I feel up, I feel hopeful. The way I've been able to overcome a lot of these obstacles is my mother always said, other people have it worse. And while I get annoyed at first, I'm like, she's right. I've just learned to appreciate the smaller things, and I've learned to appreciate thinking, yeah, there are other people way worse off than me, and I think that's what's kept me going, just to really try to stay focused on being appreciative and grateful, because I have a lot to be grateful for.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell on the Boomer Esiason Foundation's YouTube channel so we can keep you up to date on the latest educational programs for the rare disease community.